Welcome to Inquiry, a podcast geared towards students where we discuss all things related to tech, from school to industry.
My name is Annie.
And I'm Daniel, and together, we are your co-hosts.
Our team at Inquiry has been working hard to put together an 8-episode focus series titled Tech After High School. In each of these 8 episodes, we will be featuring various tech programs in Canadian schools, from varying computer science programs to biotechnology and biomedical engineering. So for today's episode, we are so excited to introduce Aryan. He's a highly motivated second-year student pursuing an undergraduate degree in biomedical engineering at the University of Waterloo. Aryan has significant interest in the fields of point-of-care medicine, medical device development, and tissue engineering. Aryan, thank you so much for being here with us today. Why don't you start off by introducing yourself?
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the amazing introduction, Annie. So as Annie mentioned, I'm a second-year biomedical engineering student at the University of Waterloo, and I'm based in Ottawa, Ontario. And currently all my classes are online, so I'm studying from home. And the field of biomedical engineering has always interested me, like from a very young age. That's why I got involved in research at a young age. And I competed in many science fairs, and that really built my base in biomedical engineering. And, I'm just really happy to be here, and I'm really happy that you guys are running this amazing podcast to educate youth about different programs around Canada. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So speaking of biomedical engineering, it's unfortunately not a program that we've heard a lot about. So could you tell us a little bit more what exactly it is?
Yeah, honestly, it really sucks that biomedical engineering programs aren't very common at a lot of schools. I know that if you want to do biomedical engineering at U of T, you can't apply directly to biomedical engineering. You're going to have to do either engineering science or another type of engineering and specialize. But luckily, we have schools like McMaster and the University of Waterloo, which offer this program. So biomedical engineering is basically an interdisciplinary engineering program that brings together physics, biology, mathematics, and all those different fields to basically engineer devices and engineer prosthetic limbs and diagnostic devices, medical imaging techniques that can be used in the field of medicine. So an example would be you go to a hospital to get, like, for example, an MRI scan. Who do you think designed that MRI? It's the biomedical engineer. So the biomedical engineer is basically the brains behind all of these devices that are present in hospitals. So biomedical engineering programs really just train students to become those types of engineers, and they also develop a lot of software skills.
So can you tell us a little bit more specifically about the biomedical engineering program at the University of Waterloo?
Yeah, so biomedical engineering programs tend to vary a lot at different schools. I know at McMaster, there's a very high emphasis on the biological side of biomedical engineering, while at Waterloo, it's more interdisciplinary. So basically, when you graduate from Waterloo as a biomedical engineer, you're a jack of all trades because you have experience in software, because you have to take software courses, you have electrical experience because of all the electrical courses you have to take, and you have experience in the field of biology and chemistry due to biology and chem courses. So it's really an interdisciplinary program that can prepare you to enter the field of like literal biomedical engineering where you're making devices, or you can even enter the software industry and create biomedical softwares. So in my program, in the last year's class, a large fraction of the class actually went into the software development industry, while some students also went into medical school and some went into other graduate programs. So the University of Waterloo is really special because you are a jack of all trades by the time you graduate.
That's awesome. And it's great to hear that graduates from this program do have that choice between more software based and more healthcare based. So can you tell us why exactly you chose this program specifically at U Waterloo?
Yeah, so the University of Waterloo is special because they have a co-op program where students essentially graduate with over 2 years of work experience. And that's really important because a lot of the time, if you want to enter industry directly after your degree, you're going to want to have some sort of experience because that's going to make you a more qualified individual. Also, when you apply to postgraduate or just graduate programs such as master's and PhD programs, it's really important to have experience in the field of engineering because it just makes you stand out as an applicant. I know that's really uncommon to hear about students applying for medical school through biomedical engineering, but I know that the University of Waterloo will give me many different types of skills by the time I graduate. So even if I don't get into medical school, I'll still have a solid skill set that I can apply either directly to the industry, or I'll have a solid profile built up that will prepare me to apply for graduate programs.
That's awesome. For now, let's take it back a few years and think back to applications. I think a lot of students, high school students especially, grade 12 this year, will be asking what exactly are the requirements in your application to the Biomedical Engineering program at University of Waterloo?
Yeah, so the University of Waterloo is pretty similar to any other engineering program at Waterloo when it comes to applying. So they're going to look at your marks in physics, chemistry, English, advanced functions, and calculus. And I believe they take one more course, which is going to be in your top 6 average. And you have to have at least a 70% in all of these courses. That doesn't say that you can get into any engineering program with a 70 average. It just says that you have to have a minimum of 70% in each course. Generally, like if you look online, like the internet makes it seem as if you need like a really, really high average to get into biomedical engineering or software, like example, like 98 or 99%. But I can tell you right now that probably over 50% of the students in my program had an average below 95%. The average was like the entrance average in my program was probably around 94 to 95%, but don't be worried if you're on the lower end of the spectrum. It really doesn't matter. As long as you have a good written supplemental application, you should be good. And speaking of the written supplemental, the Waterloo's written supplemental application is called the AIF. So it's basically just an applicant information form where you talk about your experiences and your extracurricular activities in high school, and just why you want to go to Waterloo in general. So if you have a really good AIF and you have, good marks and you do well in your online interview, because there's actually an online interview in the engineering process as well, you should be fine.
Do you have any advice in general for students who are hoping to apply for this program?
Yeah, I guess it would be to demonstrate that you are willing to learn anything in high school. So, like I'm not admissions officer, but I would assume admissions officers look for students who have done well in all of their courses, not students who've done really well in their math courses and really poorly in, for example, English. Because when you enter biomedical engineering, you have to take a lot of courses that are very interdisciplinary. Like you have to take software courses, you have to take the drawing courses in first year. Like a lot of students might not like these courses, but you have to learn how to learn things you don't like. That's really important. So just make sure in high school, if you don't like a course, don't just slack off in it. Make sure you do well in that course as well, because that's what admissions officers really want to see. At least that's what I'd assume.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, to really be a well-rounded student. And speaking of which, how important would you say it is to have a well-balanced extracurricular portfolio?
Yeah, so for Waterloo, that is extremely important. I'd say that's probably even more important than your marks, but I'm not saying that you can get in with like a very, very low average. I'm talking like if you're on the lower end of the spectrum for biomedical engineering, so for example, like 90, 91%, you may think you have a low shot at the program. But if you have a solid extracurricular background built up, you have a very good chance of being admitted because your extracurricular background really just goes to show how dedicated you are to being well-rounded. So for example, for me, I tried to have a very good extracurricular background that focused primarily on the field of STEM. So I was involved in many clubs in my school, and I was involved in research in high school as well. And I just did that to show that I was really dedicated to the field of STEM. So that's really important. And even like there were people who applied to my program with significantly high averages, like 97, 98%, and you'd assume they get admitted, but they actually didn't because all they had was marks. They didn't have any extracurriculars to back them up. So that's why extracurricular activities are really important.
Mm-hmm. And would you say that in terms of extracurricular activities that you would advise students to focus specifically on STEM related activities, or are there certain skills such as leadership or communication, teamwork that you'd like to work on too?
Um, Honestly, I don't think it really matters if it's focused on STEM. Like it could really be focused on anything really, but at least make sure a few of them are STEM focused, like a science club or math club. That always looks nice. Even being on a sports team looks really nice on your application. But the one really important takeaway is that just because you join all of these different extracurricular activities isn't necessarily going to make you stand out. Try to get a leadership role in these activities. That's going to make you stand out the most. So I'd say leadership is also very important.
Absolutely. All right, so we'll shift the talk a little bit now, more so to campus life at Waterloo. So how have you found your experience so far in Waterloo? I know things are currently online, as you mentioned, you're back at home, but at least in your first year, how was that experience?
Yeah, so my first year was actually really nice. It was a lot of fun. Obviously, it was hard because of all the courses I had to take, but campus-wise, I lived on campus. I lived in Village One, which was really nice. I enjoyed my experience there. It's a really nice community, and there are a lot of really nice study spots on campus. And since Waterloo it's kind of like a small city, so it has a pretty safe environment. So the campus is generally very calm, and you don't have to worry about downtown traffic, which you'd have to worry about if you went to U Ottawa or U of T. So Waterloo is just really nice, and the city overall, it just has a very good study environment.
Yeah, definitely agree. Saving time on traffic is really, really nice. And you mentioned that you lived on res in first year. So could you tell us a little bit more about that experience? How was it, and would you recommend it?
Yeah, so my residence experience was it was pretty nice. So I lived in an interconnecting room. So I had my own room which connected directly to my roommate's room. That was pretty nice, and you make a lot of friends in residence as well. So you meet people from many different programs, and honestly, that's really good because building connections is what it's all about. And food wise, it's pretty good as well. I know that there's a common like stereotype. I don't know if stereotype's a word, but a lot of people say that campus food doesn't taste good, like just in general. I'm not talking about Waterloo, I'm just saying in general. But Waterloo has some really good food on campus, especially on residence. So I definitely recommend living on residence. The only downside I'd say is that you have to share a bathroom with your whole floor. So that's like one bathroom for 20 to 30 people, which can get kind of annoying at times, but it's just something you got to deal with and you eventually get used to it. But overall, if you want the real first year university experience, you should definitely live in res.
So would you say that living in res made your academic experience a little bit easier?
Academically, that's a good question because academically, like study-wise, I never really studied much in my residence because I just found it really hard to focus there because there were a lot of students who were really loud a lot of the times. So I mainly studied in engineering buildings or libraries that were near my res. So I wouldn't really say residence had an impact on my academics. I feel like even if I lived in an apartment, I still wouldn't study in my apartment. I'd probably study in an engineering building or a library. So yeah, I don't really think the res had much of an impact on my academics.
Cool. So you mentioned all of these cool study spaces that were available. How would you describe the campus at Waterloo in terms of the resources that they provide and the spaces that they provide for your academic needs?
Yeah, so Waterloo is known as the MIT of the North. I mean, that's what people call it. And the school does a really good job at providing resources to students, especially study spots. So there are a lot of different spots on campus, including libraries and buildings that are open not 24/7, but pretty late into the night. Engineering buildings are open 24/7, which is really nice. And trust me, even at 4 a.m., there's probably at least 50 to 60 students studying in an engineering building. So, the school does a good job at providing study resources to students. The school also has a writing center, which can help students with report writing and yeah, it's overall really nice and helps students a lot with studies.
That's awesome. So continuing on this conversation, more so academic based, how would you describe your program so far? Is it challenging?
So it definitely is challenging. I'll say that. And any engineering program is challenging, especially at Waterloo. There's no engineering program that is necessarily easy. So yeah, I'd say my program is definitely hard because I have to take like per semester anywhere from 6 to 8 courses, which can become pretty hard to balance. And I remember my 1A term, which was my first semester, I had literally 8:30s every day, which went till either 4:30 or 6:30. And this continued like into the months of November and December. So my classes would literally be ending when it's dark outside, which is a really big difference from high school because high school is only 6 to 7 hours. But university, the course load is much heavier and you have a lot longer class hours. But everything's online right now. I have a lot of asynchronous classes, so I really just study based on my own schedule.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah.
Would you be able to share some of the courses that you've taken in first year, in your first term, second term?
Yeah, so in my first year, in my first and second term, I had to take a total of, I think it comes out to around 15, 16 courses in total. And from those courses, four of them were calculus focused courses. So one was linear algebra / calculus, the other one was numerical and applied calculus, and then there was calculus 1 and calculus 2. So I had to take quite a few math courses. I also had to take two programming courses. So one was it was a digital computation course where we basically just get an introduction to the C# programming language. Then we had to take a data structures and algorithms course, which was based on C++. So we do develop a good understanding of software development principles. We also had to take a couple of biomedical design courses where we learned about user-centered design and customer-focused design and the different types of biomedical technologies that are out there and what's taken into account when designing them. And I also did to take one chem course in my first year, which just introduced us to general chemistry. So yeah, first year is pretty interdisciplinary. You got design courses, and you also have communications courses where you learn how to write reports and you learn how to do engineering drawings. So your first year, I'd say, is pretty general, and second year is when stuff gets more specialized.
Awesome. So you did briefly allude to this earlier and mentioned that the jump from high school into university is quite large. How did you manage it and how did you find the transition?
Yeah, so the transition, as I said before, was like the jump was pretty big, but the transition, I'd say, was pretty smooth because university profs do a really good job at allowing the students to transition nicely. And the special part about my program is that I'm in a cohort-based program, so we basically have like a really nice community of professors who are very close to like our cohort, who make sure that our transition is smooth and that there are no big gaps in our knowledge from high school to university. So they do a really good job at helping us transition. Lifestyle wise, the transition is pretty big as well because in high school you're living at home, so you have everything done for you pretty much. But in university, you're either living on res or on campus. And there you have to worry about a lot of different things, such as your laundry, you have to go get your own food. So lifestyle wise, there is a pretty big jump. And it takes some time to get used to, but I'd say after 2 to 3 weeks, you should be used to all of it.
Yeah, and that's great to hear that the school it does help you out and that you have that sense of community with your cohort. I think that's so important in your transition. Moving away from academics, what sort of clubs and extracurriculars did you do in throughout your first year?
Yeah, so in my 1A term, I wasn't very involved in extracurriculars on campus because I kind of wanted to use my 1A term to just get an understanding of the academics and what I have to do well academically. So 1A term, I was really focused on just studies, but in my 1B term, I tried to get involved in extracurricular activities on campus. So for example, I joined the biomechatronics design team, where we basically design biomechatronical devices that can be applied in the field of biomedical engineering. And for example, like one of the things that we did was that or one of the projects that we have is to create a prosthetic limb that we'd send out to a patient who is requesting prosthetic limbs, like from a different country. So that's one pretty cool extracurricular activity I was involved in. And like there are a lot of activities you can get involved in on campus. Like they have design teams, they have science-based clubs. It's just I feel like I wasn't really using the resources to their fullest during my first year. And my plan was to join more clubs and design teams in my second year, but it's online right now, and my spring term, which will be my second semester, may also be online. So honestly, I don't really I can't really say too much on clubs, but I was also involved in mentorship programs in my first year on campus. So I served as a mentor on the engineering society. I recently actually started this position. This was about a month ago. So I'm basically just mentoring incoming first year engineering students at the university.
It's incredible that you're doing all of this to give back to the younger students, especially as things are moving online. As you mentioned, given that things are online, a lot of extracurriculars are actually slowly moving online as well. Have you recently gotten involved with anything else outside of school as well?
Yeah, so in the month of May, or I think it was April, when the COVID pandemic peaked, a couple of friends and I actually started an organization called the Goodwill Initiative that basically just aims to help the homeless in the Ottawa region stay safe and stay protected from the COVID-19 virus. So I really tried to work on this activity throughout my co-op term, on the side, because I also had my co-op job. And in the month of April, I also started a podcast series with one of my friends in my program, and it's called Beyond the Books. And we basically just interview a lot of STEM professionals from all around Canada. So we've interviewed many Canada research chairs, and it's just been an awesome experience that I really hope to continue throughout my time in university.
That's incredible. Honestly, been following your work and make sure everyone to go take a listen if you haven't already. All in all, do you have any advice for students heading into University, Waterloo, or just in general in the upcoming year, given that things are different and it's uncertain whether we'd really even be returning back to school anytime soon in person?
Yeah, so I mean, if you're coming to Waterloo, you're most likely going to be having your classes online for the next little while. And I know it can be really difficult to stay motivated academically when everything's online because you don't have your friends around you. You aren't learning face to face from a professor. So just try to stay motivated. Communicate with your friends through platforms such as Discord because it just makes everything so much easier, and just stay connected. Don't be that one person who just ends up cutting everyone off, because trust me, you are going to lose your motivation to study. And yeah, just don't worry too much about the transition from high school to university, because since everything's online, you don't have to worry about a lifestyle transition. It's just really an academic transition, and your profs are here to make sure that this transition is easy for you. So yeah, just don't worry too much about it. Go with the flow and stay connected with your friends and try to make new friends in your program.
For sure. It's definitely so important to get connected with one another and hold each other accountable. Now, shifting more towards our job prospects, we did allude to this a little bit earlier. You did mention that you did recently complete your co-op term as well. So how was your experience with finding co-ops at the University of Waterloo through your program?
Yeah, so at the University of Waterloo, if you want to get a co-op position that is focused on software development, it's not going to be hard for you to find a job. Like, Waterloo uses a platform called Waterloo Works, where they post all their co-op jobs, and probably 70 to 80%, actually not that, maybe 60 to 70% of the co-op jobs are all focused on software. So if software is what you like, it's not going to be hard for you to find a job. But if you want to do research or R&D, it's going to be a little bit harder because there are less jobs focused on that. So you really have to try to apply to co-ops through external platforms. That's what I have done, and that's what I'm currently doing right now because I have a co-op term coming up. So you're definitely going to find a job. I know in my program, the employment rate is pretty high. So the students in my program are pretty highly employable.
Could you tell us a little bit more about your past co-op experience?
Yeah, so I actually worked as a medical imaging research intern at the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute, and I started this position in May, and I'm currently still working part-time. So that was an awesome experience for me, and that was my first co-op term. And I'm currently applying for my second co-op, which is going to be starting in January. So yeah, and a lot of my friends actually who had co-ops in their first co-op term ended up having remote co-ops, so everything was done online. But I was lucky because some of mine was online and some of mine was in person, which is awesome. And yeah, the co-ops are gonna be online for the next little while, but you just gotta accept that.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the great things about being in this industry or just in general is the flexibility in being able to even do your co-ops, internships online. And it's a great opportunity. And I'm so excited to see where you go with even just working part-time. So would you say that your extracurricular involvements are very impressive, founding your own organization, giving back to the community, and having all of these leadership traits and characteristics developed through these experiences would be an integral portion or something that really benefits you in your co-op application search?
Well, I mean, it would. I hope it would, because like, I just started applying for co-ops, as I mentioned earlier, and when I initially applied for my first co-op, I didn't have any of these, like I didn't have the podcast, and I didn't have the organization I founded on my resume. So My first co-op search was mainly just based off my high school experiences. But for my new co-ops, like my new co-op search, I included all these new experiences on my resume, and I'm currently applying right now. So I really hope that they'll benefit my application. So yeah, I guess we'll just wait and see what impact they have on my employability.
Sure. And best of luck as you continue to search for these co-op experiences. So would you be able to tell us a little bit more about the precise timeline that you typically go through when you're searching for co-ops?
Yeah, so Waterloo actually has a couple of rounds when it comes to applying to co-ops. So I believe the way it works is that there's a first round, a second round, and then there is a continuous round. So the first round begins in the month of September, and this is if you're applying for co-ops that start in January. So your first round starts in September, and in your first round you can apply to 50 co-op jobs, and this is normally in the first 3 weeks of September. And then after the first round is done, interviews start to come out, and the second round begins. And this second round also goes for a couple of weeks, and then interviews come out again. By the time the interviews are done coming out for round 2, I think you should be near the end of October by then. And if you still haven't gotten a job by then, you enter the continuous round. So that doesn't mean anything bad. The continuous round is actually a lot nicer, because the continuous round is where they release a chunk of the research and R&D jobs, and they release a lot of jobs as well. So you can apply to many jobs in the continuous round as well. And it's just really nice. And like you can honestly keep applying for co-ops, like even like up to 2 weeks before your co-op term begins. So it's a pretty good, long process, but honestly, like you don't have to worry at all if you don't end up getting a job initially, because you have so much time to find a job.
Awesome. So earlier you did mention how if you're looking more so for research R&D based co-ops, you will need to look into applying externally. Would you say that the process is different, or the timeline might look a little bit different if you're applying so externally versus through Waterloo Works?
Yeah, so when you apply externally, in my opinion, it's better, because you just apply based on the deadline of the job application, and there's a lot more variety in the jobs that you find. Like, for example, for me, when I look for jobs, I literally just Google biotech internship / co-op in Ottawa. So that it's really nice, because it shows me a lot of different jobs that are focused in that industry. While if I write biotech internships on like Waterloo Works, literally 1 or 2 jobs are going to show up. So I really enjoy applying externally, and it's honestly probably something that I'm going to stick to for the next little while. And I know a lot of my friends do the same too. And you've probably seen a lot of Reddit threads that are talking about how Waterloo Works, the job scope has been really bad lately, especially because of COVID-19. So yeah, a lot of people have just been applying externally, and it's a good plan.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any tips in terms of what one would need to prepare or to think of when applying, whether internally or externally?
Yeah, so have a resume prepared and keep your resume updated. And also try to get as many people to critique your resume as possible, because your employer is your employer looks for a lot of skills and a lot of small details that you may not necessarily see in your resume, but other people could, and their input could really benefit your resume and just make it better overall. And also make sure you have a very good cover letter that introduces you very nicely. Make sure it isn't too long. Just make sure you get to the point in your cover letter. And yeah, and if you get selected for an interview, just be yourself. Be confident. Talk about how your goals line up with the goals of whatever company you're applying to. And yeah, you should be successful.
Thanks so much for sharing that insight. So what sort of jobs do graduates from the biomedical engineering program usually go for? I know this program is still relatively new, but if you have any insight on that?
Yeah, so my program, I believe, has only had 2 graduating classes so far. And from those 2 graduating classes, a lot of graduates actually went to either like New York or Toronto or Seattle or the Bay Area in California to work for either big banks as software engineers, big tech companies such as Facebook or Twitter as software engineers, and or some biotech companies as software engineers. So a lot of people went to software engineering and the field of biomedical software engineering. But there also were some people who went to work for a lot of biomedical design companies, which is really awesome because there aren't a lot of students in my program who have graduated in the past who've gone directly into the industry and went right into the biomedical field, because a lot of people end up pursuing PhDs or master's degrees or MDs. So yeah, I'd assume that the people who are doing masters and PhDs want to get some type of job that's in academia, because that's what a PhD and a master's would really help with. And obviously the people who applied for med school want to become doctors in the future, which is really awesome too, because having a bachelor's in applied science, especially in biomedical engineering, and an MD is literally like such an amazing combination, because you can be a doctor and you can do like biomedical engineering research on the side. So yeah, there are a lot of people who go directly into the software industry for my program, but as I said before, you're a jack of all trades, so you can really go into anything you want.
Absolutely, and that sounds incredible. Where are you headed after graduation?
Yeah, so for me, my plan is to apply for MD programs as well as master's programs, because if I don't get into an MD program, which I don't really expect myself to get into as an engineering student, I could go into a master's program. And after I'm done the master's program, I'd have the option of either applying for an MD again, or I'd have the option of going into a PhD. So I definitely want to do several more years of studies after graduating, and we'll just see how it goes after.
Great, and we're wishing you all the best in that journey. This wraps up all the prepared questions we have today. In general, do you just have any advice for any student who might be considering the biomedical engineering program at the University of Waterloo?
Yeah, so just know it's an awesome program. It's really different from a lot of other biomedical engineering or engineering programs, because we have an awesome cohort setting. So you literally get to know everyone in your program, and you have the same classes as them at the exact same time as well. So it's really, really awesome, because you make a lot of really good friends in your program. And if it's the community feeling that you value, you're gonna get that community feeling in the biomedical engineering program. And also the school has really, really nice resources. For example, we have E7, which is Engineering 7, which is where I have all of my classes, and it's just a really awesome environment, and you're really gonna enjoy it. So just work hard in high school, and I'm sure you can get in.
Awesome. Just a quick follow-up question on that one. So what kind of student would you recommend this program to?
So I would recommend this program to a student who has a very deep interest in the field of STEM, or has an interest in the field of biotechnology, because this program can really benefit you by providing you exposure to the field that you're interested in, and it can allow you to build up a solid profile that can support you in your job search, in your co-ops, or even after you graduate. And obviously the student will have to be hardworking, because engineering is not easy. It requires many hours of studying every week. So the student would also have to be very hardworking, because when you enter the field of engineering, hard work equals success. That's like period. That's the only way you can really do well in an engineering program. So yeah.
Thank you so much. And that concludes all the questions we have for you today. Once again, thank you so much, Aryan, for being here with us, for sharing your wonderful insight. And you guys, if you made it this far, make sure to go check out his podcast and get a listen and a firsthand insight into the STEM industry.
Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap on episode 2. This episode is part of Inquiry's focus series, Tech After High School. We hope you enjoyed.
Thanks for tuning in and having us be a part of your journey to code your future.
Make sure to follow us on social media to stay in the loop and for a chance to have your questions answered in our next episode. See you then.